Okay, we're getting settled here. Give us another minute or so. We have Mr. Norcross on the line.
Present.
Okay, and Mr. Leonard's?
Here.
Okay. I couldn't hear you guys very clearly, but did hear you.
Isolation. Hey, Mark, are you there?
Yes, we're here. You're pretty light.
Pretty late? Okay, let me see what I can do.
Them at this point. Give it a second while we figure that out. Try it again. All right. How about now, Bill, Ed?
Are you able to hear me better now?
All right. So, Bill, go ahead. Say, did you have something?
No, I just asked if you were able to hear me a little better now.
A little better. We think we still have to adjust the volume in the auditorium a little bit, but find that right balance between not being too loud. All right, and Ed?
Sound check.
Okay, that was all right. Okay, and we have
Thank you to the AV.
What's that?
I said thank you to the AV staff.
Okay. All right, and we have all other board members are present. All right, so let's call the meeting to order.
First, the announcement we had
discussion, executive session part of this on litigation, and as well the annual safety report from Chief Carter.
Just note that the agenda says that we will have an executive session,
continuation of the safety report at the end of the regular board meeting. We in fact were able to complete that prior to the meeting, so there will be no executive session afterwards.
With that, we'll call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Two point zero three.
May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll say
Mr. Leonard's got that one, and Dr. Bueller got the second. That's all right.
All right. Any
changes to the agenda? All right.
Just want to stop for
the printed versions have 707. I think that was just due to timing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
And that's what everybody here would have.
Online, yes.
Okay.
Online, it shows the correct one. So just for clarification, we have moved seven on the printout version 719, which is revision of policy 707. Which is use of school facilities on the second read. That was in the consent agenda, again on the printed paper, and that is now moved to a separate discussion item. I'm not logged in yet, but it's 10.03 now.
All right, any
other discussion, clarifications on the agenda?
Okay, all those
in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Say nay.
Okay, agenda
passes.
Right,
we have a motion to approve the minutes.
3.01.
Move to approve.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
Keller. Thank you. Any discussion, corrections, omissions, anything like that on any of the minutes?
Okay,
hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
say nay.
Okay, minutes are
adopted.
Briefly,
President's report.
So, and Mr. Whitman,
I don't want to take any of your thunder, but I'm sure you might probably say something on graduations as well.
But
it was really great. Each year that is such a really wonderful experience. When I first joined the board, people had said, "Oh, that's your compensation." And at first year, I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." But it really is. I'm humbled each year to know and I'm appreciative for all of the educators that got the students graduating to that moment. And then allow us to present the diplomas to them. It's a very humbling moment that I really cherish to be able to spend that moment with the student as they transition to the next phase of what life will give them. And we couldn't have asked for maybe a little bit cooler, but weather was incredible this year. Unlike years past where we were getting in between potential rain showers. Next item, superintendent search. We met with Tom Templeton last night on a couple of things. One was just status, and that's the search is continuing. I mean, he reminded us it's this time of year where we're wrapping up one school year. Getting ready summertime and all that. So he expects that we'll see more people applying and et cetera. But he has many discussions with folks, and he's working the crowds, and whatever phrase we're going to use with that. But he also cautioned us. It's like don't. We're going to take the time. We have Mr. Larry.
Redding,
thank you. I was drawing a blank there. He's not able to make it tonight, but he is going to be starting July 1st as the next acting superintendent. That was business we covered at a prior meeting. And the board also included with that superintendent search update was just a workshop where we got into just great discussion amongst ourselves about some of you will like this, differences between leading and managing, strategic versus operational. Just starting to think again, like what does 8 years look like? The kids that are in second grade now. What is it that they will be like when they graduate? What should they be able to do, et cetera? So just a good conversation, because those things feed into what we would be looking for as a superintendent. So with that, are you going to mention also about the summer feeding program? Okay. So you might have seen on the website and announcements. We had the summer feeding program that starts again on June 12th and running until the 27th. And there's I don't recall the places. There's 4 places where the food will be distributed. One being Ben Chambers and another in Scotland. And there's one at the park. And Oh, you got that one? Okay, I didn't mean to steal it from you.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, there are actually 4 open sites. One is at Ben Chambers, Stevens Elementary, Mike Waters Playground, and the Housing Authority. And then we're also serving other programs such as the Boys and Girls Clubs. Those are closed sites.
Yeah. So if individuals need information on that, check the website or look for alerts that have been sent out, pushed out notifications. Two other things. One is I need to announce that Region 7 board vacancy. Mrs. Smith was on the board, as we all know,
for quite
a few years, and she has moved
from
the actual area in which her geographical area out of a region.
Even though it's in town, still within the district,
our setup, where you have 9 different regions, you have to live in that geographic region that you represent. And it doesn't matter whether you move across town or you move across the country. You got to be in that region. A move outside of that constitutes a vacancy. So we'll go initiate the process for advertising for filling the vacancy. We also recognize this is a position there's a general election for in November. So it's only going to be for a short time frame to backfill Mrs. Smith's. And then the last thing, just a kind of a note for fellow board members. We have success in sports again. Dr. Long brought up that we have 9 teams this year that went to states, and that's like probably the best ever showing. Including the track and field that we know won states, and we have girls softball that continue. I think they won yesterday and have a game coming up tomorrow. Yeah. So with that great success also comes some additional cost. So we're not lamenting that. We're happy to have that, but we know we're going to have to do some transferring of money from some accounts, and so just kind of a heads up with those will be coming. That's what I have. So we'll move to Mr. Whitman, 402.
For the acting superintendent's report, just letting the board know that even though Friday was the last day of school, our teachers were back at it on Monday. Our summer professional development started, and Cash's lots were full the last couple days, pretty much through June, and then not too much in July, but ramping back up in August. We have a lot of professional development opportunities that our teachers are taking advantage of. The next few things I know Dr. Schur spoke about, I'll hit a little different there. We had board members that attended 3 different graduations last week. Franklin Learning Center was on Monday, I believe. Tuesday night. Yeah. And then Thursday night was CMS, or Career Magnet School, and Friday night was Cash's. The ceremonies were excellent, and I personally received many compliments about the ceremonies from the community. Want to thank the folks at each one of those places, the administration, for putting on a great graduation, and of course all of our faculty and staff that assisted and really brought it together. Also had the state championships to talk about. We have several individual state champions for track and field, but the team garnered enough points, the boys team, to win the state championship. The great news is all the point earners were underclassmen, so that they hopefully will repeat next year. So that was amazing. Yeah, thank you. And then he spoke about the girls team. They actually won 16-0 yesterday in the state tournament. So traveled 3 hours to do that too. So thank you. That's all I had.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So move to 5.01. Which is members of the audience are invited to comment on agenda items. Thank you for filling out the attendance sign-up sheet. I'll run down like I normally do, calling you by name to come up for the agenda item that you've indicated. We do have, as you can see up there, I want to read this. We're going to start reading this for board meetings going forward. Public comment is not a forum for personal attacks, antagonistic behavior, or harassment. Please be advised that you are accountable for any legal ramifications and liability that results from statements that misrepresent the truth, defame individuals, or disclose personal information that is not of public concern. All right, first is Jordan Stanley. And you're going to speak on 719, which we said now is going to be 10:03. If you come to the microphone so it can, I'm sure you'll be able to project, but just in case.
Like I said, my name is Jordan Stanley. I'm talking about the item 719, which we have moved. I'm a board member of the Chambersburg Youth Association, just talking about what it would do to us, to these costs that we kind of went over. And you'll hear other board members speak, but it's going to put a pretty big damper on what we have planned and the vision to then feed into the high school and the relationship that we want to have with the board members and the high school team itself. So I'm just speaking on that. Hopefully we can kind of table that and come to a different, what do I want to say here, recommendation of the cost. The $1,000 for the facility is a lot for any youth organization. You guys spoke on the fact that your 9 teams went to states, which is a great thing. It's what we want to continue here in Chambersburg. That's our vision to eventually go into that. So we just like to table that and kind of figure out what's best for everyone. Obviously, the school wants to rent the facility. It's a beautiful facility, but we also want our goal is to have a home somewhere. So that's kind of all I have.
Okay, thank you. Crystal Cozy. Not sure which agenda item, if you indicate that when you come up. 10:03, thank you.
Hey, okay. Crystal Cozy, 6072 Cumberland Highway, taxpayer and parent. I want to say that I'm attending tonight, not just to listen, but to represent the organization that I get to help with each and every month. My passion for the community and the children continues. Many of you have seen me in many aspects within the district, within other community programs. But like I'm right now blessed to lead with a board of directors on Chambersburg Children's Youth. We've been developing this organization to be a feeder program in Chambersburg to support not only the school district, but the entire community. Many of you know youth sports feeds academics. It feeds higher graduation rates. It feeds less risky behaviors, a greater leadership, more goal-oriented kids that can plan, kids that can be confident with self-esteem. It's bigger than sports. It's bigger than football and cheer. A few years ago, we were asked to organize this organization to come together for all football programs in the area to have one organized feeder for the school. And some of us jumped in, and it's been a journey, but it's been hard. The last few years have been a struggle. There's not been clear, consistent direction, information, responses, and collaboration, but I refuse to be anything other than positive to make this organization successful. The implementation and enforcement of this facility policy could cause great hardship on any nonprofit that is trying to do a direct mission to support our students in our school. We understand that there are costs associated with the use of always being expenses, but being able or having the ability to have to pay for rent for green space and fields when they're not being used and could use some care and love, there has to be a reasonable accommodation. I don't look at that as the best practice for what our district needs right now. We need a partnership and alliance, and we need the community. This is just one piece of the puzzle of obstacles that we feel we have encountered in attempting to provide this community program. We've offered to stand beside staff and do events. We've offered to do repairs, work events. I mentioned a little bit about this at the last board meeting in a different capacity, but we have offered to do mentor with children. We've worked directly with some of your staff, your counselors, your teachers, and district administration on students that needed a little bit more effort or families that needed some needs, transportation, or other items. We offer assistance, we offer grant programs, and we make sure that no kid is turned away because of their economic, their family situation, their non-ability to have an address, or ability to have the apparel or equipment that they need. We would like to have a continued alliance with the school district, and we hope that we can feaster this in the future. I do have a handout for you guys, and I'll take my time now to hand it out.
Thank you. Okay, next I have Valerie Jordan on 802.
I hope Mr. Leonard is listening because he's the chair of finance, and I hope you received what I wrote, because I want you to think about this. I wanted someone encouraged me to email you this information. And I should have done it sooner so you could all mull it over. These are your numbers. Now, this is to only the Finance Committee. In the last 5 years, your estimated revenue has increased by $5.7 million, and your market value in that same time period has increased by $500 million. Page 11 in your budgets. For 2022-2023, your assigned funds sat at $19.8 million, while in 2023-2024, it now shows you increased this fund to $24.7 million, or another $4.9 million. You increased both funds by $7.2 million, which hurts the general fund, which funds all education-related items. Translation, both are rainy day funds, while the general fund will be carrying a deficit of $860,740 into 2023-2024. You don't have to go into 2023-2024 with a deficit hanging over your heads if you move at least $1 million out of either the committed or assigned funds, assigning at least $1 million back into the general fund to assure all vendors get paid on time. You have time to figure this out because by law, you don't have to have your budget to the state until June 30th. You vote for this budget tonight, you are faced with laying off your neighbors that work in this school district. You are asking our CFO to work miracles with the general fund without knowing whether vendors will tack on interest and penalties to their bills. That could even go to your attorney. While the time comes for a $40 million project that Mr. Norcross has stated time and time again is coming, the bank is going to see your deficit that you created, and it will cost you even more in a higher interest rate for said project. And I thought the idea here was to save on interest payments, which in all honesty doesn't happen in a deficit looming over your heads. I ask you hold one more Finance Committee meeting where I could attend and speak without the Sunshine Law being violated. Instead of adopting your budget tonight, it hurts you in the end too, and it does. In fact, the 2016-2017 budget wasn't adopted until June 15th, 2016. So I know this action can be taken. Thank you, Valerie Jordan. Think about it. Think about it.
Thank you. And next up is Mike Hayduck on 715.
Good evening, good people, one and all. I refer you to agenda item 7.15, approval of a unique field trip. As you may recall, the student that this field trip will support spoke to you recently. She made her case for you to invest in this event and to support her development. I believe you will approve this request. It is righteous, and you should do the right thing. But I know some of you on this board are always interested in the numbers. So let's take a look at the numbers. This field trip will last 5 days and will cost approximately $1,700 or $340 per day for the student. That's not to mention the requirement for a chaperone, so double the cost. Now we are at $680 per day. Let me reiterate, this is a proper investment in one of our students. Now let's take a walk down memory lane. Just a few weeks ago, there was a request for about $70,000 to provide an investment in playground equipment at Thaddeus Stevens Elementary School. Now that sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? But let's put it in context. So Stevens has around 350 students. They go to school about 180 days a year. If we do the math on this investment, it comes out to about $1.10 per student at no additional cost for a chaperone. We have teachers there who are paid to do the job they love doing. Furthermore, chances are many of those students would use this equipment on non-school days during the school year and during the summer. More bang for the buck. And by the way, this was a community effort through an organization outside the district plus donations. So I encourage you to support the student who has shown us her awesome abilities. It's worth every penny to promote academic achievements. But don't each and every one of you think that spending $1.10 a day to provide our kids, they are all our kids, a safe environment where they might develop healthy habits is a worthy investment. Let those numbers sink in. $680 a day versus $1.10 per day. Let those numbers sink into your brain and hopefully sink into your heart.
Thank you. I don't, excuse me, I don't see that anyone else has signed up for public comment on agenda items. Okay. Okay. What's his name again? Lee Harder? Okay. I'll write you on down here, Mr. Harder. All right. And which agenda item?
Well, good evening. I'm not sure what it is. This is my first time. Is this on? 10.03. 10.03.
Okay.
So this is, good evening, everyone. This is the first time I've ever attended a school board meeting in person. So if I'm out of protocol, forgive me. I'll do better next time. I'll learn as I go. Proud graduate of class of '92. I'm a parent of a 10-year-old. I live in the borough. I volunteer as a coach in the CTYA flag football and tackle football program. And yesterday afternoon, I learned that a vote was to be taken tonight on measures related to the rental of facilities. And as I started to hear more details about that and learn more about it, I became increasingly concerned about the impact that would have on many, many families in our community. And so my request, I'll make it very brief, my request is that we table that vote this evening and give both the board and members of CTYA time to, I know work has been done on it. I understand that now, that work has been done on it to get to this point. But as an organization, we would like to have some time to talk through some strategies, look at the year ahead. The football season is going to start in 6 weeks. It's upon us, it's here. And so this is a very concerning development for parents and coaches and kids. So my request simply is, could we table this for not too far down the road and have time for further discussion? Thank you very much.
Thank you. attachment. 1 second. Okay. Getting a little clarification on something. Okay. That covers 501, so we'll move to 601, debt service options. Oh, okay, all right. Okay, all right. Who else then? Go ahead.
Hello.
There you go.
Okay, hi. My name's Chad Coretta. I should be on there.
Okay, got it.
Okay. My son Aaron just started playing football last year. He's a soccer player, basketball player. He's played a lot of different sports. We've been engaged with a lot of different clubs, a lot of organizations. So I'm here to give a little testimony for my son because I think it's a fantastic program. My son, again, he's a rock star soccer player, and that's what I thought he was going to do. He's going into 7th grade, and he wanted to play football with his friends. So I always encouraged him to do what they want to do. So he decided he's going to play football. So he did. And this practice schedule, I was scratching my head how I was going to make it work because they practice a lot. Compared to what we were used to, so it was very different for me. It was a little challenging at first, but he loved it. You know, I was like, "Do you want to do this? I support you either way." And he's like, "I love it. It's better than soccer. It's better, than the other sports that I've played." So, we stuck with it, and it turned out to be incredible for our entire family. It's something we love to do. Everybody shows up for the games, a lot of support. The families are extremely supportive. It's just it's just a pretty incredible organization. So, I heard if you can table it, I don't know what options are on the table, but I do want to share that I'm not the only. I don't know that everybody was prepared to come and speak, but I know I'm not the only one. We love this program, so that's all I have.
All right, thank you. All right. Yeah, all right, so what's your name?
Yes, it's on. Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Melissa Criollo-Zambrano. I am actually not a resident of Chambersburg. I actually currently live in Greencastle, and originally from New York. So as somebody who grew up in Georgia and New York, I'm very well accustomed with sports, being big on those two states, and also very aware of the way it contributes to the community, as well as to the school system and to the town in general. So with that, I am here about the 1003. I'm going to be honest, I didn't really know about this meeting until today. So I didn't come very well prepared, so I do apologize if I'm misinformed in anything. But the reason I came in here in interest is because I do work as a medical provider. I'm a primary care physician, nurse practitioner.
I hate to interrupt you. You're not a resident of Chambersburg?
I currently reside in Greencastle. My son does participate in the Trojan football league, and we've actually been discussing moving to Chambersburg area because of that league, which is why I decided to come up to speak, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah. For our policies, you need to be a resident or a taxpayer or have some other interest.
Again, I've never been to one of these things.
Understand.
I only found out about it today, so I was unaware, but I do apologize. So I'm assuming I'd have to end up leaving then?
You can submit something in writing.
Oh, I can? Okay. By when do you guys need that writing? By tonight?
As soon as
Because
you
are
can, but I
voting
think,
tonight, correct?
Yeah, but you did say you were going to talk about 1003, so I think we can presume what your position was going to be for us. But yeah, you can. I guess you could email something to us.
Okay. So then just email then.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right.
I have a question. Is was her lack of residency?
Right.
That's what.
Right.
Her son playing in the sports league here, is that a concern or? Just for clarification.
It's
Because I would personally like to hear all the voices on it, if that's possible. But if not, I just want to, advocate on her behalf if she's able to speak concerning that.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm looking at the attachment that's in here about the resolution of. It says. Things about the taxpayer should be afforded.
Mr. Walker, it's not a program affiliated with the district. Just for purposes of public comment, you have to be a resident or a taxpayer. So something can be submitted to the board to read, but with respect to commenting at the public meeting, that's why we stop that. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, others? Okay, sir.
Hello, my name is Brian Kranak. I am actually the president of Chambersburg Junior Trojans. I coach football, basketball, and 2 baseball teams. I think I know our league personally, if we have to pay for the fields, we won't be able to continue playing football. Chambersburg Junior Trojans were the Chambersburg Steelers, which was the longest youth football league in Chambersburg. And then we changed the name to Junior Trojans to kind of resemble the Chambersburg Trojans. But we wanted to be the Junior Trojans, so we weren't the actual real Trojans. We practiced at Stevens for the last 15-some years. Most of our kids come from the Big Lot area. If you know that area, they are not wealthy at all. They walk to practice, ride to practice. We coaches, other parents drive them to games. I've been with the organization for 7 years. There's kids' parents that I've never seen before. Football is literally their only way out. So if we have to pay, we won't be able to afford to continue playing football. Thank you.
Others? Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Then we'll move to 6.01 on the agenda, debt service options. Mr. Fry?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Again, my name is John Fry from PFM Financial Advisors. Nice to be in front of the board again. I was at the Finance Committee meeting in mid-May to discuss the capital projects of the district and the potential financing of those projects, and I've been invited back tonight to further that discussion. So I have a brief handout provided for the board. Quickly on page 2, the interest rate chart in the middle of the page there, just a market update. Municipal bond rates, this is an index that goes back 30 years. This is the AAA Municipal Bond Index, just to show you a proxy for how interest rates have been moving. While they have come up since the all-time lows during the pandemic, they are still well below the 30-year average and actually have stabilized while having increased about a month ago. They've come down over the last 2 weeks. So it remains a good time to borrow, again, well below the 30-year average for long-term municipal bond rates. The next page is just there for your reference. This is just what we provide just as a snapshot of the district's current debt service payments for all the existing bond issues that are outstanding. I just have it there as a reference that we are continuing to monitor the bonds that are the oldest of your bonds on the left-hand side of the page. Some of them are becoming eligible to be refinanced. The interest rates that you're paying on them right now are still low, so refinancing doesn't necessarily provide enough savings, but my office will continue to monitor that, because as interest rates change, perhaps over the next year, those could become potential targets to save money by refinancing them. But moving on to page 4, really the heart of why I was invited to be here this evening. As you see here, I got this list. This is right from your facilities department, from Matt and Ed, and working with Tammy, and we threw it in here. And so many of you have perhaps seen this, but this page is the next 2 fiscal years of capital projects, and shaded in yellow and in green are what was deemed the critical projects, with the other projects deemed as non-critical. And then the green highlights are what was considered to be eligible or prioritized for bond financing, while the yellow is for use of capital reserve. So in the red, in the box at the bottom, that adds up to critical projects over the next 2 fiscal years of $29.1 million. And at this time, it was considered that we could do a bond issue program for the 27.3 of that, with about 1.8 million as capital reserve, again, funding the 29.1. Again, this is an estimate and will be refined as project bids and so forth come in, but this is, for discussion to start to try to focus on these priority projects over the next 2 years, and how to go about beginning to finance those and lock in interest rates at the appropriate time. The next page is just a continuation of that list. It goes out into the out years, and that's just there for your reference, but that is the out years of the plan as it stands. And then page 6 is what our office then put together, again, referencing back to if we need a bond finance for 27.3 million of that 2-year fiscal plan, how do we get $27.3 million over the next 3 calendar years in this instance, the most efficient and effective way for the district? So what we've laid out here on this page is a 3-step plan based on calendar years, because the IRS rules regarding certain tax exemption is based on calendar years. So we kind of view this as 3 steps over calendar year 23, 24, and 25 to finance the $27.3 million. And again, as you look at that, about 26 million of this is for the CAM South project. I should have mentioned that before, but that's maybe obvious from that list, but it's the vast majority of the project to be financed. So step 1, to be focused on the left-hand side. So what we've tried to tailor this is to do $10 million approximately in this year. If we get moving and are authorized to proceed, for instance, in August, we would need to settle by the end of the year. So if we were authorized in August, we could be prepared to lock in rates and settle this by November. The estimates there then are in column 6 of what the payments might look like over 25 years to fund about $10 million. Again, these are estimates and will be determined at the time of final pricing. Again, as many of the board members, or some of them, have been aware of doing past financings, $10 million or under in a calendar year by IRS rules does give tax advantages to the investors of these bonds. So if you issue $10 million or less in a calendar year, your interest rates are slightly lower, and you also have a better call date on the bonds, which allows you to refinance them in a sooner period of time than if you were, for instance, doing more than that. So while we always can't tailor programs to be $10 million or less, in the instance if you really needed all the money in 1 year, you'd have to go do that. But in this instance, based on the timing of the project, we feel like we could do $10 million this year, $10 million in 2024, and then finish the project in step 3 on the far right. We would right-size that and refine the final borrowing to be exactly what you need to finish out the project. So again, these steps are just estimates and will be refined as the project bids come in. The all the numbers on the project kind of drive this, but then also the timing of the bond issues and the interest rates. So these are all just estimates, but it was trying to show what a 3-step plan would perhaps look like if we get moving to finance those critical projects that we've laid out in that prior page, mainly CAM South. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions. Again, this was in large part reviewed at the Finance Committee and then kind of refined over the last 2 weeks based on the project estimates.
So start with on the phone, Mr. Leonards, or do you have any questions? Okay, Mr. Norcross?
No additional questions
Okay.
from me.
Thank you, Mr. Leonards. Mr. Norcross?
No question, just a couple comments, and I did mention these at finance, but I'm sure we have more people in the audience tonight than we did at finance. First off, I'm glad to see that we are using a level refinancing. It's something I really believe in. Been talking about it for many years on the board now, and in my opinion, it's a long-term strategy that's really going to help us. Now, it's going to take 10, 12 years, but it's going to help us. And if you look at slide 3 in Mr. Fry's presentation, you can see those payments, and for most of those series, they've been anything but level. Every time we added a new bond issue, we just kicked the can down the road and we paid it off in the latter years of the issue, so that our annual payment was always the same. But that cost us a lot in interest, and I'm glad to see it's level. A couple other comments. Mr. Fry mentioned it. The 26 million for Cam South, and then if you go down in the 26, 27 year, there's the 21 million for Cam's North. I've been talking about mentioning previewing a 40, 45, $50 million figure for 2 projects. There they are, 26 million and 21 million. My other comment is, and that if you look at slide 6, so just to borrow 27 million, which gets the work done at Cam South, nothing else on this list really. By the time we do these 3 issues, it's $2 million a year in annual local effort to pay the debt. We can't wait and try to raise taxes at one time for $2 million for new debt all at one time. The options would be, it would have to be offset somewhere on the operation side. No one wants to do that. So that is where this concept of the X plus Y component of our proposed tax increase comes in. That we don't wait until 3 years from now and say, okay, now there's a new $2 million bill every year for the next 25 years. We're going to do it in steps, and we're going to build up to it. And keep in mind, that just is 27 million. That list is 77 million. There's another 2 million to do north and say the Grandview. If you take Cam's North, Grandview, and Hamilton Heights, now you're 30 million. So in the course of foreseeable 5-6 years, we're going to be adding probably $4.5 million of annual debt service to our expenditures. So we're going to step our way into it and not try to do it all at once. So I applaud our staff, administration, the finance office. On the surface, and to the public and the taxpayers, I know it looks like a big, tough pill to swallow, but it's a managed approach, and I'm in favor of it. We've realized the need. We know we have to borrow money, but we're going to provide a way to fund it. Future boards can change it, so be it. But if we're going to borrow the money, we need to propose a way to pay for it.
Okay, thank you. Here in the auditorium, any questions or comments? The only one that I have is, so the June 22nd, that's a finance committee meeting. Are we having, is it buildings and grounds also?
There may be one item for buildings and grounds.
Okay. 'Cause I think the the one thing that and we've covered the project list at Buildings and Grounds multiple times, multiple years. It's a great project list. That's essentially what we have there on starting page 4, 5, 6. It's the stuff we have in the upcoming years. I think we have to go back and also look at some place, where do we factor in those other things that we know exist that aren't necessarily maintenance, as most of these items are, but also kind of structural. We've hit before about Stevens and Falling Springs and others that have a kind of a gym cafeteria thing like that. That's one. We know that that's operationally problematic. So I think at some point we do need to take that and have that discussion about where do we want to put those? Because if we're talking bonds and et cetera, that should be factored in here also, because those items aren't going to be cheap. And similarly, then, if there's things that we might have to say, well, we're not going to do X whatever thing it is, that's going to have to get pushed out another year or two. But I think the Buildings and Grounds is always the most appropriate place to talk about that, because that's where we always do. All right, any other questions for Mr. Fry? Okay, as always, thanks for driving in.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it. Consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda? Or let me first ask, is there any items on the consent agenda that anybody wants to have pulled for separate discussion? Okay, hearing none. Now, may I have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the items on the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Okay, consent agenda items are passed. 801, approval of the 2023-2024 Homestead Farmstead Exclusion Resolution. We have a motion to approve that.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, discussion, questions about Homestead Farmstead. I mean, these are all items we covered at Finance and Committee of the Whole last time, but still questions could arise. Are there any? Okay, hearing none, let's do a roll call vote for these next several items.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Mr. Leonards?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Dr. Schur?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Okay, thank you. 8.02, we have a motion to approve the budget as presented.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Leonards. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Norcross. All right, discussion on the budget.
Yes, I'd just like to say, I realize, first of all, I want to say I appreciate Mrs. Stauffer and all her team and all the work they've done. They've done a tremendous job. I've always had the highest regard for Mrs. Stauffer and her team. I just was raised physically conservative. My parents, my wife's mother, because she didn't have a father due to her mother being widowed when my wife was only a couple years of age. And I realize things are going up. I mean, all of us know that. All we have to do is look around when we go to the grocery store, gas pump, even though that goes up and down. But I just have problems continuing to put a burden on, I guess what I call a large part of our community being senior citizens in that. So, you know, I just have trouble with a 4%. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Dr. Shore?
Yes, Mr. Leonards.
Okay. please interrupt me if you can't, if I'm talking too loud or if you can't hear me.
Actually, you're a little faint, but we can hear you.
Really? Okay. I'm not sure why, but I just want to start or add to the discussion that the committee, the 4 members on the finance committee recommended the 4% increase to next year's budget. I was personally looking at 3%, but the additional 1% will go to our capital reserve balance to help fund future projects and help mitigate our debt balance. So including the proposed $4 million transfer that's in the budget into the capital reserve, our capital fund balance will be about $11 million, which kind of pales in comparison to the projected $30 million that we need to renovate both CAMs North and South. We already have debt of $138 million, which costs the district about $11 million a year. And I just think, wouldn't it be nice to put some of that money we spend on debt into the classroom instead? Are you able, am I talking too loud?
You're good.
Okay. We have, 17 school buildings and 4 other buildings in the district that we need to maintain. So having a plan to pay for this responsibility is critical in my opinion. So besides funding the capital fund, we have almost $9 million of unfunded additions or growth identified in tonight's budget, which are not in the current year's budget. So where does that leave us with the 4%? Okay, the 4%, yes, there's a projected 2.2 million deficit. However, it doesn't include the 0 state funding, which is the wild card. But with the anticipated state funding, we could have funds, okay, left over just like we did last year, and the deficit would disappear just like last year. And remember, the use of the word deficit at this point is a little bit misleading because none of the $9 million plus-ups have been approved yet. And I just wanted to mention some of the cost drivers that are, part of the reason why I support the 4% increase. The special ed program grew at 3.3 million, or about 16% from 21 to 22. And there was a cost transfer this year around I think it was close to 2 million. And Tammy can correct me if I'm wrong. So the program grew about 78%, or almost $11 million between 2013 and 2022. And some of the other things that are, costing the district are, we spent $2 million in programs dealing with disruptive or troubled kids. Our cyber charter schools are up 138% from 2013 to 2022, or 2.4 million to 5.8 million. And you might think this is partly due to growth in student population, but the population has actually decreased. I'll call it the COVID year of 2020. We had about 9,456 students to, according to the district's website, we have about 9,103, which is, a little over 300 students less, which is a bit surprising. Now, some of these have gone to homeschool and cyber schools. And I also want to put some funding comments in perspective when it comes to comparing this district with the whole state of Pennsylvania, which has been brought up several times at our board meetings. The state averages can be misleading. When you strip out districts like Philly and Pittsburgh, you get a different picture. There is one statistic that I was a little bit surprised about. I got it on openpagov.org. For the 10-year period between 2001 to 2020, property tax revenue in our district has increased by 93%. 93%. Out of more than 500 districts, only 4 other districts in the state have gone up more. And as far as spending for instruction per student for the 2021 school year, which is the latest data that was available in openpagov.org, we are second out of the 5 schools in the county, only behind Fanet Meadow, which only has about somewhere between 400 and 500 students. And I found out that we collect more local taxes per student than any other district in the county. And another difference when comparing our district with the state, and this will be my last comparison, although there's more, the average funding provided by the state to schools is 36% of the school's total revenue. Chambersburg only receives 28% of its total funding from the state. And by the way, another fascinating fact, at least I thought it was fascinating, there's over 100 schools in the district, or 100 districts in the state, I'm sorry, that actually had tax decreases over the same 10-year period. I just wanted to put that in perspective. And it doesn't take into account the quality factor, because I believe we have quality teachers that can do more and are better at their jobs than most in the state. Lastly, I believe society as a whole benefits from the education of our children. Therefore, I also believe everyone should directly contribute financially, not just property owners. I say this in part because I don't believe another 93% increase in property taxes is sustainable. I believe we should consider other funding sources, perhaps taking a look at raising the 1.7% local income tax or the realty transfer tax, and perhaps the occupational privilege tax. Just something to think about, and perhaps put on our finance agenda at some point. That's all I have. Thank you.
And Mrs. Stauffer acknowledged putting it on the finance agenda.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we got you there. All right. Thank you, Mr. Leonards. Since we're on the, and Mr. Norcross, you had already spoken on this part, right? Or anything else? No, you talked
Correct.
about Mr. Fry. Anything on this?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Same thing. I mean, 1% of this is future debt service.
All right, in the room, any other questions on the budget, 802? Or comments?
Yeah, I have questions and comments, and I'll just start by saying, I think Mr. McKee and I are on the opposite side of this, and that's why they seat us at opposite ends of the table, because we don't get along on this one. I'm joking. Mr. McKee and I, we get along fine. Yeah, and I just want to lay out for all of you kind of where I'm at and why I am where I am at. I'm aware that Mr. Lenartz is correct about some of the county info. Our entire county, though, has underinvested in schools when it comes to per pupil investment. All of the districts in our county have low per pupil investment. So when I look at state data, and you can look this up, Pennsylvania Department of Education, you can look at the National Center for Education Statistics and find the same information. We are 48th out of the 50 largest districts in the state in terms of how much we invest per student. We're in the bottom 10%. Our own audit revealed that last month that even in our own LIU, So it's a 3-county area, 25 school districts. The average school is spending $3,000 more per student than we are. That means if you're a teacher facing a classroom with 25 students in it, you have $75,000 less that your employer has invested within your classroom. You spread that out over the whole district, and we're missing out on $28 million compared to the average school just within our own 3-county area. That concerns me. What are we missing out on as a district? What kind of resources are we missing? What kind of staffing are we missing when we're in the bottom 10% in the state? I'm also concerned about the classroom size. We have the largest classroom size in the state. Of the 50 largest districts, we are 50th out of 50th. If you look at the data, I'm concerned, and I've spoken to the board numerous times about all of this, but our hourly wages for some of our employees, custodians, $12 an hour starting wage, $11 an hour for lunch aides, teacher assistants, $13 an hour, personal care assistants, $13 an hour. I think we need to pay our people a living wage, a competitive wage, a wage that communicates that we value our team and communicates dignity to those that work for us and clean our schools and care for our students. We've already talked about a game plan for our facilities. That's a concern of mine. We have major expenses coming down the pipe. I don't know that taking out debt and all of that, we could be funding some of that and saving some interest. I'm also concerned about facilities that aren't clean. I hear about this on a regular basis from teachers, from students, from parents. And I could tell stories about bugs and floors that haven't been mopped for the entire year and all those kinds of things. At the end of the day, I think a lot of that's on the board. We have positions that have been open for months on end that are hard to fill because we're not compensating people at a rate that's competitive. I'm also concerned about our administration. I hear from teachers that feel like they're not sufficiently supported. And as I've dug into that and asked why, it seems like perhaps our administration is thin in a number of key areas. So my question is, are we doing everything we can to move this district in the right direction? And we're in a position where we could potentially go all the way to the index, but we're not. So I think the answer is no. Mr. Whitman has talked about how he'd love to see Chambersburg be the top district in this region. I love that vision. I've heard other people say they'd like us to be in the top 100 districts in the state. There's 500. Could we be in the top 100? I love that vision. Does this budget signal to the public that we're serious about that? Or does it just maintain the status quo? We submitted a comprehensive plan to the state. Every 3 years we have to do this. We identified goals as a district. 2 of those goals, we want to recruit and retain a talented, diverse workforce. We also want to improve our climate and our morale. How much does this budget help with that? I'm afraid it's not a whole lot. We had a climate survey recently. 500 staff were surveyed. Nearly 3 out of 4 disapproved of the job that we all are doing. And so I've been asking people, what could we do collectively to change that? Because I don't want to see 3 out of 4 teachers feeling like we're not doing a good job, but it's going to take us being proactive, right? Boards have to be proactive. We need to show the public, teachers, parents, students, that we understand the current situation and that we're doing everything within our power to address. We talked about the state. I think Mr. Lenartz is bringing up a great point. There's a significant problem with the state funding formula. We can't control that though, right? Some of why we are where we are, where we have large classrooms and underinvestment in our students, is not something that this board decided. But what we can do is we can decide where we go from here, right? We can take responsibility for what is within our power to change. I already talked about cleaning, but yeah, it concerns me on the climate survey when you have 71% of secondary students saying that bathrooms are not clean in their school. And I get it, we're talking about kids, like bathrooms are gonna get dirty, right? But when I hear reports that things are not being cleaned, sometimes for months, that's concerning. does this budget do anything to address those concerns? I just am a believer that it's fiscally irresponsible to not invest more in education. All year long, I hear about how we don't have enough money. And tonight, if we move forward with 4%, we're leaving $1.3 million on the table. For what? To save taxpayers $1 a month? I think that's just, why I really just don't understand. Like, it feels to me like we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Like we have to choose between A and B when we could actually have both. That's the conversation that we have often. We can't afford to not invest in kids in education. Not investing in education is almost always more expensive. We're going to pay for it either way, a little bit more now or a lot more later. Here in Pennsylvania, what's the cost of juvenile delinquency? It's $200,000 per year. That's basically the same cost as employing 2 teachers. I would rather see us invest in education than in incarceration. Schools, not jails. So I just believe if we move forward with 4%, rather than going all the way to the index, it will cost us more in the long run, whether that's through students that aren't adequately supported, don't gain sufficient skills to really thrive in life, through government support for our low-wage workers, or bonds that we pay interest on to do facility upgrades. So I recognize a lot of the issues that I'm concerned about, they're not quick fixes. They're not things that we can just, make a vote tonight and all of a sudden they'll be gone, right? These are things that if we're gonna seriously address them, it's gonna take years, right? But my question is, why aren't we starting tonight? We could, but instead we're gonna leave $1.3 million on the table. I would just encourage us to consider the 9,500, 96, 93. I'm not sure what I think the website number is not up to date, but however many students it is that we serve, we've got to put them first when we think about the budget. And some of these issues, I think we're not able to provide the kind of quality education that I would like to see us provide if we don't start taking a proactive approach with all of them.
Okay, other comments, questions?
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with some of Mr. Rayburn's comments, especially when he starts comparing, using, state data to compare Chambersburg. When you strip, and I said this before, when you strip out Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and to a lesser extent Harrisburg, you get a totally different picture. I mean, it skews when you include those cities. It skews the data. So, unless you have like a cost of living index, for those areas that you can apply, you're not really comparing apples to apples.
I like that idea.
And again, it's not always about more or more, quantity. It's also quality is a factor. And I think we have much better quality here than what they do in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia.
Okay, Mr. Raber, any follow-up questions, comments?
No, I like his idea of like over if there was a way to do that, I think that would be interesting to see. So, but the fact of the matter, if we're in the bottom 10%, you could pull out Philly, Pittsburgh, and Harrisburg. And if you're in the bottom 10%, you're still in the bottom 10%. I mean, you eliminate those 3 and it's still, okay, now we're in the bottom 15%. I mean, I just don't, I think he's making a point, but I don't think it's drastically changes the dynamics.
Okay. Mr. Walker, just make sure you're close enough to your mic. I think you were going to say something?
Yes, yeah, I was. I wanted to say, we're in a hard place right now. I think from the past several years, I think we all know that. We know that and we here on the board, we volunteered for this. We threw our hat in the ring for this, and this is where we're at. And we want to do it. We want to do it well. We want to, we want to make sure we get it right, and we don't always do the right. We don't always get it right. We don't always get it right. And with that being said, I would like to personally, apologize if we haven't gotten it right. I feel like there's been a huge chasm that has happened over these past several years, that there's a lot of divide, mistrust, polarization, all sorts of things. And if we're going to move forward and do the right thing by the school district, by the children, by the citizens in Franklin and Chambersburg, we're going to have to come together. And with that being said, we expect a certain level of excellence from the teachers. We want them, to do certain things. This is the curriculum we want taught. We want this thing laid out because we want our kids to be, have a great education. We expect our students to be excellent in how they move and how they do things. I think the same standard needs to be held to this board, myself included. I think that there's a level of excellence that we need to start moving in to make these things happen. And that excellence involves, and I'm in agreement with my colleague, with Mr. Raber. You say we want excellence, and I've heard teachers speak on how buildings weren't being cleaned. So we send our children to a school where I don't know how many vacancies there are within the custodial positions, and so you have things that are missing because there's a lack of excellence. Why? Is it because of the pay? Is it because people just don't want the job? I don't know what it is, but I think that there's something that we need to lean into and find out so we can get those positions filled. We're missing teachers. We're missing teachers' aides. There's a lot that's we need to lean into. And as board members, we may not have necessarily caused it. We may not have, but here we are having to deal with it. And I think that we need to make an investment. And I said this last year. I'm personally, I would like to see at least a 4.5, if not 5. It's going to take money, to fill these slots, to fill these positions. And it's also going to take teamwork from us here on the board, working with the teachers and the administration and all the other staff. And I'll even go back as far as a former colleague of ours, and may he rest in peace, Mr. Dolan. And I remember him saying how, the food service providers, and he was adamant about how these people need to be paid. They can go to Sheets or they can go to Rutter's and what's to stop them from doing that if we're not paying a decent wage for them to stay here? I think, in my barbershop, when I cut hair, I have a price list. And when people pay me, that's that's good, because you ain't getting out of the shop without doing it. But how do they show me more appreciation besides a comment? Oh, that was a great haircut, or a pat on the back. They throw me a little extra. That's greatly appreciated. I appreciate that whenever there's a few extra dollars attached to that. I don't know so much that what we're paying in certain positions to fill these positions. I don't know how many open slots do we have right now that we're looking at. Is it in the 90s? Where is it at? And if the budget is not reflecting us having to take care of those positions, we were looking for excellence. We want excellence. We want students to graduate highly educated. Well, we're going to have to put money where our mouth is and invest in these spaces and in these positions to make sure that our children are getting the proper education that they need. and sometimes even things outside of, that, and that's at a younger age in development. Even something down to what a lot of you are here for with the football program. And I know that has nothing to do with this budget, but I'm just saying that takes investment into our kids, into our future. We can pay now or we can pay later for whatever that looks like, and we all have to stand on whatever decision that we make up here, and that's why I was all in for the YouTube videos, to leave it up there. And for whatever we decide, we're going to have to stand on that, and we're going to have to live with it. And y'all gonna be like, yeah, hey, Mr. Walker, you didn't, or I can be like, ha ha, yes, we did do the right thing. Yes, I did do the right thing, and pat myself on the back because I know I did the right thing. But I would rather see, the 3 + 1. I would rather see 4, 4, 5. That's all I got.
One last thing then I want to note is that if you look at the budget, okay, we have an additional almost $9 million additional increase in the proposed budget over last year's budget. $9 million more.
Yeah, I mean, we're in an interesting spot. I think the way it's framed sometimes is a tax increase, but 3% at best is just level, right? If you have a 1% increase, you're cutting something, right? Because our teacher costs are going to go up 3% every year. Healthcare costs are up 10% some years. We have demand for services in a way that is unprecedented in some of our departments. So 3% at best is just keeping things level. Right? So 3% is really 0% in terms of impact to kids. So this is a 3 + 1. We're going to keep things level, basically, in terms of what the budget does, and we're going to set 1% aside for capital improvements, which will help, it's going to give us $1 million roughly every year towards the $50 million that we need to spend in the next 5 years.
Well, it increases special ed by over $2 million. It increases technology by $500,000. Mm-hmm. We added 4 intervention teachers. Mm-hmm. We have a behavioral specialist, $110,000. I mean, you can look at the list. It totals to almost $9 million in additions.
Yeah, I think many of those aren't even things that we have a lot of control over. When you look at areas where we do have cost increases.
And I'll say this too. I think that this right now, it's an employee's market, whether we like that or not. It's an employee's market, and we're going to have to go along with, other districts or whoever's paying whatever. Then that means we're going to have to step up and pay that extra or whatever if we want, quality with teachers, janitors, food service, teachers' aides, whatever the case is. And that's what we're in right now.
I have no other comments.
All right. Any other questions, comments from the floor here? Okay. Hearing no more comments or questions, we'll begin with the roll call vote.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Mr. Leonards?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
No.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Raber?
No.
Dr. Schur?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
No.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-3.
Capital Reserve Resolution 8.03. May I have a motion to approve the resolution as presented?
Move to approve.
Thank you. And a second? Sorry, was that Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right, any discussion, questions, et cetera, on the Capital Reserve Resolution? No changes from what it was discussed at the Committee of the Whole. Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Leonards?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Dr. Schur?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. 9.01, we have a motion to approve the contract and statement of work for a student to attend Hoffman Academy.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
I believe this is the one he
Abstained.
Okay.
abstained, okay.
Mr. Raber?
Sorry.
Dr.
Drop my
Schur?
mute button.
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
And Mr. Leonards?
Yes.
Motion passes 7 with 1 abstaining.
Okay, 10.01, personnel actions. May I have a motion to approve the personnel actions as presented?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, any questions, discussions? Okay, all those in favor of approving the personnel actions as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Personnel actions are approved. 10.02, motion to approve the personnel actions for new positions as in the proposed final general fund budget.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Questions or discussion about this? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of passing it, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Okay, 10.02 passes. 10.03, may I have a motion to approve the revision of policy 707 on the second read.
Move to approve.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Okay, now discussion. So we heard quite a bit of comments tonight. I think one thing we'll want to remember is that there's and anybody correct me if I misstate this, there's a difference between, we have to keep in mind, there's a difference between the policy and the language that we're looking to enhance in the policy itself from the attachment, which is referred to as like Schedule A, which actually or technically is an administrative regulation. So I would say that I would still like the policy to be considered and moved ahead because we have language changes in there that we like. The comments that we heard tonight were really a lot about the concerns of the hardship that the change in the fee schedule would cause. And I think that's something that we could or that should be taken away, and because we don't have to implement that, and we're not approving the AR, it's just the policy. So it could be a takeaway. There could be discussions, et cetera. We could figure out. I think I heard there's a phased implementation plan. We could come up with something that works because we know the organizations provide a great service for people in the community and especially our students. So we would have to just figure out what the right implementation of the schedule would be, which isn't something we would pass tonight because it's an AR. So I throw that out there, so feel free to jump on it.
Can I?
Dr. Short, what would be the harm of if we tabled this tonight? I mean, I for one would like more information. I'd like to hear from John Nichols and Sean Temple. I think I just don't feel comfortable. I just need more information, and I would like to table it.
I'd like to add too that I would like to see it tabled too. I'd like to make a couple comments. I read through the policy. It's a long policy. I read through that, and I don't see much with the policy. I think the policy, we need to do some updating there. But the fee schedule, I was not realizing the depth that it was going to. I know that this was worked through the policy committee, and I didn't realize the depth of how much that would cost these organizations. I do have a belief, though, that when we have outside organizations come in, even though there are students, if we have custodial expenses, whatever small expenses we have, that can be put onto an organization and will not break their bank. But, you know, when they're paying to do all these different things, and you add up the total, if they use the stadium, which as far as a community event, I've been to some of these football games, and they're outstanding. I mean, the community is really behind this program, and the parents and the confidence that the kids are gaining from this, and how well the program has been running. I mean, I just sit there, and it's a well-oiled machine, and it's really been good for students. But this fee, I didn't realize. I mean, we have a paper here that is very complex with all the practices. I think if you look at the fee schedule and somebody comes in and uses a stadium for a one-time event, it's $1,000. Yes, that's high, but it's a one-time event, and maybe they're using it all day. Well, if you bring these kids in and use it for 1 or 2 games, and you add all the extras to it, it really starts to add up. And these are all volunteers that have put this together, and it's actually a feeder program. Yeah, it's a 501(c), but it's also a feeder program into our football program, which is something we want. Plus, you know, there's over 275 kids involved in this, so it's become a really good program for kids. And so I just didn't realize how much it would cost. Because, of course, they practice a lot, as one parent said there. They practice a lot, but every time you go on that field, you're going to be paying a fee. And, you know, if there are costs associated with a custodian, or you need a special announcer, or you need something else done, or even a small fee for the concession stand, I think small fees will be great. I also thought, as I was reading through this today, maybe there needs to be a column beyond the A to the B, like A1, and that's the next column, which would benefit our kids. Because, you know, outside organizations that come in, it's very different, but we are servicing Chambersburg's kids in a quality program. So I thought about that. I also want to say, too, I know this committee has worked very hard on this policy, and I didn't pay as much attention to it until today when I saw these numbers, and then I thought, we've got a problem. How do we rectify this problem? But if we go forward with this fee schedule, I mean, youth organizations just don't have that kind of money. They just don't. And if you pass it on to the parents, there again, you could be eliminating students. We don't want to eliminate students. We want all to participate. And so I would love to see the whole thing tabled and get it right. They can start these practices till we can get it where everybody could work together. We probably need, and maybe this has already been done, is to bring in some of the people that are in these, like the soccer, the basketball, the wrestling, all these feeder programs. Maybe could have a representative, and we could work through that fee schedule so that everybody, all our kids can have what they need. And, you know, I was even thinking today, you know, kids don't go out outside as much, but in these programs, we have the kids in organized games with good people, role models, and being with their peers. There's so much good that comes out of it. So, but I also think we do need a policy, and we do need a fee schedule, and get it right, and then pass it.
So I know that from the policy committee, the fee schedule was based on, I think, some research of other districts in our general area that have it. But a question, if I can, for Dr. Long. We had, I know there was, Dr. Dearley, you talked about, you know, the custodial expenses, et cetera. We had to, reseed, redo? If you could talk about the impacts that we have. Yes. Oh, okay. because there are, while you're teeing it up there, it's there's some large expenses that go along with this. And as we just discussed, once we hear some of these, we just talked about, well, expenses that we're not putting in the classroom or whatever. So if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we spent last fiscal year just for 2 treatments, that would have been 1 fall treatment, 1 spring treatment, just for fertilizer and grass seed, we were a little over $21,000 just for our district, for our grass field. So that would be the Cam South field, that'd be Cam's North field, and we did some work on the softball field this year. So we're also looking at, we do a summer treatment, a late summer treatment, so we're probably another $10,000 or $11,000 per treatment there. So there is some expense there with fertilizer, seed, man hours, things like that. I mean, I'm kind of unique in this situation. I'm the assistant facilities director, trying to be fiscally responsible, but also I'm a high school football coach here. So many years as a youth coach. And so, I mean, the idea of this policy is we looked at Cumberland Valley, we looked at Centennial, we looked at Middletown. We kind of, compared some fee schedules and put together a proposal based off of what other districts are doing. Our fees were actually slightly lower in some categories. And so we kind of went with that as initial policy, thinking it could be adjusted in the future. But yeah, as it stands right now, we have custodial coverage here every weekend on our turf field for I think 4 games. That custodial coverage is paid at overtime rate, so it's time and a half. That's all an expense to our department. Paper products, things like that that we're using. And so, again, our goal is certainly not to make money. We want these students to be active. We want these students in our program. We want them to come here to our high school. So there are 4 feeder programs for the Chambersburg Area School District that feed students to us. Some of the other organizations don't get the opportunity to use our stadium. I know when I was a youth football coach, we had 1 day a year where we would come in and we would play a turf game, and it was an awesome atmosphere. It was an opportunity for our kids to have big eyes and look at the stadium and think about what high school football looks like. And so it was a special thing. And so, I think some of these organizations now play every home game at our location. And so that's wear and tear on the turf. We've had to add an additional, we have our turf, I'm drawing a blank here on the word, but manicured, so we fluff the rubber, we do disinfectant, and we actually increased that cycle to 4 times a year just because additional wear and tear on turf. So there are some expenses. Certainly we don't want any organizational hardships. We want to work with those individuals and those groups, and we want those students to be here. So, certainly something we can have more discussion on.
And my comments on a representation that I disagree with doing these. It's just we got to keep things, as we just talked about in the whole budget thing, is balanced. We just heard we have custodial people that's out with the turf field at time and a half, but yet we hear the bathrooms are dirty.
Well, I'd like to just add that I think that when a custodian is at an event that is not a district event, that should be paid for by that organization. But when they use the field at north or south, you're going to be putting fertilizer and all that stuff on there anyway. That's a district issue to begin with, that you would be fertilizing that field just for that, I would assume. And any damages, the policy covers any damages that are done by any organization. They should be billed for any damages, and they should be held responsible for that.
So I think you would say we would have fertilized and taken care anyhow. Does this just have to, because I think there's also concerns about conflicts of schedules and us not having.
Yeah, and how the FMX system works is once a request is input into the system and it's approved, and then that date's blocked out, so nobody else can have. So there are times that our own student athletes can't be on the turf because of other commitments because of the youth programs and things like that. The other issue with treatments, so our football season, we practice on bus beaters, we play our games on the turf, but our season ends around October, end of October, where a lot of times the youth season goes to Thanksgiving, and I mean sometimes even I think they've gone even a week after Thanksgiving. And so the challenge that puts on B&G is our spring sports start March the 6th, all right? So when we have a team out there on our turf, so Cam's North, for instance, had some pretty significant damage the other year, and we actually had to move one of our programs to Green Township because the field was not suitable for them, because you can't seed and fertilize at the end of November, and you have no time prior to March 6th to get any treatments down. So there is a challenge there. I mean, certainly we want to work with these organizations, and maybe it's a rotation. Maybe we have to rotate areas. Maybe, I mean, there's going to have to be some open dialogue here and some discussions, but there are challenges to the organization playing late into November and our spring sports starting so early.
Other discussion?
Just like I just said that I would prefer that it be tabled, the
Okay,
policy
so
and the fee schedule.
let me interrupt then. I've heard that a couple times. So is there a motion to table this or not?
I'll make a motion to table.
Okay, thank you.
Let me, well, yeah, I do too, but don't we, I make a motion that we table it until the next board meeting, which is in 3 weeks.
Okay, so we'll take Dr. Diller's as a motion, and Mr. Leonard, you kind of repeated the same thing, so we'll consider that to be a second. Under parliamentary procedure here, we had a second. We do not have debate. There's no amendments, so we go right to voting. A roll call vote, please, on tabling this.
Can we identify what we're looking for in between now and I mean,
Well, that's something that would have to be taken care of when it gets tabled and addressed before it comes back.
All right.
All right. So roll call vote, please, to table.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Dr. Schur?
No.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Mr. Leonards?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Motion to table passes 7-1.
Okay. 11.01, committee reports. I'll just kick it off this time. The Lincoln, Mr. Woodman said Franklin Learning Center had graduation. It was a really wonderful experience. First, I've been there for a couple of years. This was the first one that I actually went to for graduation. We had 2 students that graduated from Chambersburg there, and it's just a special time. Lincoln Intermediate Unit has their meeting tonight. Obviously, I'm not there, so we'll get the minutes from that and what's covered. So we'll start at the right. Mr. McKee?
Yes, I'd like to, I'm on the Transportation and the Policy Committee. I'd like to send kudos to Mrs. Stein, Mrs. Stauffer, and the other Mrs. Gogler and Mr. Walker on a great job of getting all the contractors back for next year. They've all signed, ready to go. I come from a bus driving family. My dad was a bus driver for many years. I drove bus. I know it's sometimes a thankless job, but I appreciate our contractors and the great job they do in getting the students here. On the policy committee, this year, 22-23, first of all, there's 272 policies in the district. The number of new policies has been added is 4. One of them is currently going through board approval process. The total number of policies reviewed this year has been 52, and the number of reviewed policies that resulted in revisions were 37. So I think the policy committee, that's Dr. Shore and Mrs. Gogler, and the others involved are doing a great job. I think that's a lot of work in 1 year meeting every month. That's all, Dr. Shore.
Thank you. I'll just add to it. We've taken a bit of a different approach with some of the policies, because if they're finance related, then it goes to finance committee, because that just makes sense, instead of the policy committee. But where there's not a clear committee that would govern that, so to speak, then that's where policy committee jumps in. So thank you, Mr. McKee. All right, Mrs. Gogler.
Yes, reporting for the Career Tech. The Franklin County Career and Technology Center administration presented information at the last Joint Operating Committee that I think should trouble taxpayers in the Chambersburg School District. The Commonwealth Cyber Academy is developing career tech courses that may attract unsuspecting students and parents who are considering cyber schooling. Although CCA website states that they are a cyber charter school at no cost to families, according to Education Voters of Pennsylvania, Chambersburg School District paid charter schools $5,788, or almost $6 million in the 21-22 school year. In the state of Pennsylvania, more than $2.6 billion in tuition payment to charter schools was paid by Pennsylvania taxpayers in that year. Flawed calculations using outdated charter school laws means that we are paying charter schools significantly more than they need to educate children, and significantly more than can possibly be spent to educate children in the brick and mortar schools that we operate. Charter and cyber schools can spend excess funds from school districts on anything they choose, so your property taxes are paying for expensive advertising, lavish salaries for CEOs, and other luxuries our administrators can't even dream of presenting to the school board. If the success of cyber students equaled that of public schools, or if the charter and cyber schools had to play by the same rules related to attendance and other regulations imposed on public schools, we might agree that for some students it's a wise choice, but that's just not true. The rules just are not equal. Now, the Commonwealth Cyber School is preparing to enter the career tech marketplace. They're recruiting teachers for multiple online career tech courses, including Cosmetology 1 and 2 and other career tech programs that common sense tells you requires hands-on skill. Would you like to have your hair done by somebody who didn't have any hands-on practice before they graduated from a program? I don't know how they're going to do it. State lawmakers need to be contacted to fix the problem of the charter school law to align actual costs to save tax dollars and curb wasteful spending by charter and cyber schools. The Chambersburg Area School District and the Franklin County Career and Technology Center need to publicize the accomplishments of our students and graduates. Problems exist in our public schools, but actual problems need to be identified and corrected. Our teachers need to be supported in their grassroots efforts to provide the best possible education for our students. Different students have different abilities, and meeting those needs requires a coordinated effort. Spending more money doesn't assure a better quality outcome. Ignoring a problem doesn't solve it. And in this area of the cost of the cyber charter schools, we need to be contacting our state legislatures and asking them to update the laws relative to the payment for cyber schools.
I just couldn't get past the thought of, I'm going to take an online welding class.
Well, actually, welding is not one that they have.
But you said cosmetology, so it's kind of the same.
But they have a long list of tech programs that they are suggesting that they can have.
Yeah. Dr. Shore, I can email you a haircut if you'd like.
Okay. I'll take that. With that, Mr. Walker, your turn.
No, that's all I have.
All right, Dr. Diller?
No.
Mr. Raber?
I'll just say that I agree with Faye's comments wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And thanks for the bit of humor mixed in as well.
All right, on the phone, Mr. Leonard.
I just want to thank Tammy and Danette and the whole business department for putting together another budget for us. This will this will be my last one, so I gotta say, I'm not too sad about it being my last one. I'm kind of happy about it, to be honest. But Tammy, I don't know how many more you got to do. No, you don't answer that. You don't got to answer that. You know.
Yeah.
I just appreciate everything you and Danette and the whole department has done over the years with these budget briefs and finance committee meetings and laying out, you know, a budget brief that is easy for the lay person to understand. You do an excellent job. And with that said, our next finance committee meeting will be on June 27th. Thank you.
June 22nd, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, June. What did I say? The 27th.
22nd, 27th is the next board meeting, right? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Leonards. Mr. Norcross.
Yeah, our colleague, Mrs. Gogler, gave a great report. And not only did the staff, Dr. Schumann, Mr. Miller, and Mr. Scholes, they presented, as Mrs. Gogler said very appropriately, an alarming trend or thing going on. But the other part of their presentation that I really enjoyed was what they have been and what they are doing to counteract this. They are taking a very proactive approach to this. And if the board wanted to hear more, I could ask, you know, Mr. Miller and Dr. Schumann to come maybe at the next committee of the whole or something and just share that same presentation. It was disturbing, but it was very enlightening, and it was encouraging to hear what they are doing to counteract that within Franklin County Career Tech. You know, they're not just staying put and crying foul. They're trying to move outside the box a little bit themselves while not impacting quality. So just something to think about for the members if you wanted to do that some evening, committee of the whole. I'll invite Mr. Miller over. Just let us know. And you know, the notion of how do you get how do you learn a trade online? That's one of the things that just isn't published through this Commonwealth Charter Academy and those like it. These aren't NOCTI certified programs. No one really knows much about them, including in the hands-on part. And it's a sad situation, but the staff at Career Tech is really trying to stay ahead of it.
Great, thank you. Move now to members of the audience are invited to comment on non-agenda items. The same disclaimer as was read previously, and same thing before: taxpayer, resident, and comments to 3 minutes, so forth. I recognize those that had circled yes. You might have already spoken, so if you want to wave me off, just let me know. Crystal Cozy, you're good? Okay. Lee Harder, you're all set? Okay. Valerie Jordan.
Couple items that I put on my notes here. Just for this organization here, $9,000 is charged to our school district from Guilford Township for softball fields. I also spoke to this nice gentleman who's going to be heading the maintenance department, and he said there's other organizations that will be affected by this $1,000 fee schedule, but they're not here tonight. So I know how to read a bill list. It's unfortunate that prices have to go up. So you decide, okay? Tonight I'm disappointed you voted no on the budget. I mean, didn't do what I asked, because it's going to hurt you. Pittsburgh does have top schools. A few years ago, we got a $16 million increase. It went for the school budget. It went from $160 million to $176 million, and I did not get a tax increase. I am getting a tax increase with $9 million, and so are you. Long-term debt has been paid down from 2011 to 2012, and from now, but we have a lot more revenue, and I will bring that to the next school board. A lot more revenue, because I know how to read a budget and I know how to read a bill list. But here's what really brought me here tonight. And you got my second public comment. At the last board meeting, I listened very carefully to what Mike Haydock said to you about books being screened properly in the school's library system. I know books get a thorough review and screening because my husband and I donated a book called The Dressmakers of Auschwitz to both high schools. Mike's comments started me worrying this book title was taken off the library shelves at both libraries. For that reason, and that reason alone, my husband and I request a walkthrough of both libraries to see those books. It's a renowned book. It's such a renowned book that the first time I saw this book was in the bookstore at Auschwitz concentration camp. Acting Superintendent Wimbin, make these two visits happen for us when time permits. You have the sole authority to do so, not the school board. I also don't care whether MAGA didn't study history. I know I did. And my husband and I experienced history while walking through Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camps in 2016. Now, Costa Academy also looms heavy on my mind, even 2 weeks later. By law, teachers and administrators can't show partiality. If a student goes against the district's code of conduct standards passed by you, the board, you act for the good of all. And I'm almost done. It doesn't matter what race, gender, creed these students are either. Note, a sixth grader is being expelled tonight, or he was expelled because he carried a knife into school. I have no sympathy for him. His parents, not the administration, are at fault here.
Try to wrap up.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
I thought it was over.
Okay. Next I have is Chad. I think he had left. Okay, he did. Okay. All right, Curtis Shoup. Thank you.
All right, good evening, school board and administration. I'm coming to you this evening as a parent. After listening to the public comments at the last school board meeting, I'm concerned about the general theme that popped up, and that was the policies that were not met. So students and parents addressing the concerns about multiple policies were not being followed to protect the students. In addition to those concerns, I haven't heard anything brought up about the climate survey that was recently done. And I just wanted to share with you some of the results that I think need to be mentioned. From grades 3 to 5, 54% of the students are picked on, made fun of, or called names. 40% of them say students are bullied at their schools. Grades 6 to 12, 52% of the students say they are being picked on about their physical or mental disability. 50% say students are often bullied, and 71% say bathrooms are not clean in their schools. Grades 9 to 12, 57% of the students say they are picked on about their sexual orientation. From the CASD staff, 52% say verbal abuse of teachers often occurs. 48% say their school doesn't look clean and pleasant. 46% say the school doesn't provide resources for supporting social and emotional needs. 42% say the school doesn't place priority on addressing students' mental health needs. 73% say our school board doesn't make decisions based on what's best for the children. 74% say our school board is unsupportive. And 71% say our school board doesn't allow the admin to lead the district. And 72% of our teachers say our school board doesn't make sound physical decisions. From the parents, 52% say our school board doesn't make decisions based on what's best for our children. 50% say our school board is unsupportive. 48% say our school board doesn't allow the administration to lead the district. And 52% say our school board doesn't make sound physical decisions. And this leads me to my last point. I know it's not easy being a school board member, but what I see as a parent is several board members are trying to run this school district themselves. That is not your job. It is the job to oversee the administration and rely on their expert opinions as to how to run the schools. How you respond to these issues from the climate survey will define who you are as a person in this community. Will you stand up and fight for these kids, or are you okay with these results?
Thank you. That's all that I see for public comment. Okay. With that, the regular board meeting is adjourned. Since we've been at this 2 hours, we'll take a 5-minute break and then start the committee of the whole. Let's try to keep it close to 5 minutes.
Crystal.
All right, so just since YouTube, we're going to change the order a little bit for the committee of the whole, just for some logistics here. We're going to do the therapy dogs first, and then we're going to go to 107 while Mr. Z is still here. And then we'll let him start driving back, because I think the other stuff we should be all right. All right, so Mrs. Clever, 115, therapy dogs.
Okay, thank you. So we, as a policy committee, had a presentation, I believe back in January, by one of our high school guidance counselors, Audra Hockreister, I believe is how you pronounce her last name. And this is something that, you know, we definitely could see that she was very passionate about. This is a newer policy, I think, out there across the state. She had presented us with a first draft during her presentation. The policy committee reviewed it. We also went out to some of the other districts in the state that recently went through the application, or excuse me, the approval process of a therapy dog policy using what Audra had put together. And from 2 other school districts, we drafted our policy that we are bringing forward and recommending. And then we provided that to Attorney Z to take a look at it, and he had shared that he has had some recent experience in reviewing this policy as well for some of the other districts that he services. So what you have before you is the final draft, if you would, of this policy. Again, this is a new policy, as this would be a new service that would be provided here at CASD.
Any questions about it? We went over this one quite a few times.
No, I like it. I think we got to. I'm in favor of us trying this out. You know, it's. I think there were questions the last time that we've heard answers to.
Well, and I'll add that you mentioned there was a presentation. It was both to the policy committee and and to the board. I think the board one was like end of February-ish. And she had some takeaway questions that to which she had responded back to us, and I had forwarded that to the board. So this, what you see here, is kind of like the aftermath of that, where we further research and et cetera. So I'll be quiet for other questions.
I understand, the importance, I guess is the right word, of what therapy dogs can do. I know there's a lot of veterans, and I know of some that that suffer from PTSD that have therapy dogs. Now, not that our students are suffering from PTSD, but I just, in principle, I get the idea of having therapy dogs. I'm just not so sure about having them in a school setting. If the need is there for therapy dogs in general, and also, I guess one of my concerns is, does this open the door for like therapy cats or therapy ferrets or therapy horses or other animals?
Therapy snakes.
Well, let me address some of the questions or comments. The PSBA, when we had policy 718, which is about therapy, I think it's animals in general. Service animals. It did come down to us from PSBA with horses, little ponies or something. Yeah, miniature. We struck that one. So we do have a policy on service animals in general. This is kind of like I don't call it a sub policy, but it's in that general category.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
So I'll just address that real quick. So a service animal and a therapy dog are two very different things, and there are only two animals that can be a service animal, and that is a dog and a miniature horse, and that is governed by the ADA. With respect to a therapy dog, I have not seen any school district throughout the country that has a policy that deals with anything other than therapy dogs. I guess conceivably, if a school wanted to, because it's not ADA related, they could have other animals, but I have not come across that in doing this work anywhere in the country.
So are we gonna open ourselves up for a lawsuit? Somebody comes in and says they want a therapy horse? I mean, I've seen some pretty frivolous lawsuits since I've been on the board.
Not in my opinion, Mr. Lawrence. I think that, again, you could have a therapy horse, and that is actually could be required under the ADA. So, for instance, if you had somebody come to one of your football games and they had a miniature horse that was a service animal, not a therapy, you would be required to allow that animal to come in. I mean, there's some nuance to that, which I won't get into. But with respect to liability or opening yourselves up, if you said, hey, we're going to have a therapy dog and we're not going to have a therapy snake, I think someone said down the end of the row here, I do not believe that opens you up to any sort of liability. But you're not required, again, you're not required to have a therapy dog policy. You'd be taking this on your own. There's nothing that under the law that would require this.
And then Bill had asked about the need or whatever. I know, Bill, you speak, I think, nationally on therapy when trauma, and also Tina, you said that there's Shippensburg has one. I don't know that it'd be used how it's proposed here, but Shippensburg, I think the LIU, are they getting one or? Okay, I thought I had heard that, but okay. But Bill, you want to?
Yeah, I mean the PTSD question. I think that was I appreciate your comment, Mr. Leonard. I think you probably, and I'd be speculating, but I don't think I'd be off on this. I would say you probably have anywhere from 10 to 20% of your students who have experienced some sort of trauma, many of whom are diagnosed with PTSD. If you experience complex childhood trauma, typically the diagnoses, because there's not a lot in the DSM for that, would be PTSD. So you probably have a lot of students here that have been diagnosed with PTSD.
Yes, that's what I was just going to say. I'm in the process of finishing a book called The Body Keeps Score, and it's about the childhood trauma issue and so on. I think it boils down to what is our mission here at Chambersburg School District, and there needs to be support of children who have emotional issues, but I think that our mission is really education, and we are allowing some of the social, emotional issues of society to erode our mission of education. And therapy, to me, is something that's important in a context of outside of the school walls. I just am not sure that we are not expanding well beyond education in so many areas. And if we would just do education well, we'd be doing our children a lot of service.
Don't you think that this would help us do education well?
If they had their therapy that they need before, after, this is, as I say, yes, you have to have therapy to overcome some of these issues that children are dealing with, but that's not our purpose as a school. Our purpose is education.
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple comments on this as well. I really believe that it's an outside of school situation. I believe therapy dogs have their place. I also, as we talked about, perhaps a guidance counselor bringing the animal in. I also know how disruptive it can be in a school environment. I've been in a school system with a therapy dog, and we have limited resources in our counseling department, and to go off and be doing class sessions with this dog, there's children that students that need to be seen on a regular basis, and I want that to happen. Our focus, as Mrs. Gogler has said, it needs to be on education, but at the same time, have our counselors available to students. I see it as a distraction. I also see if someone wants to bring a therapy dog in for a short visit for a specific reason or to help a specific student, but to have a therapy dog on a regular basis in a school system, I think it is a distraction. Plus, at what point do we have one at the high school, the elementary, wherever they want to put one? You could have more. So I really think we need to focus on having our counselors and our administrators in the office be available to students and not be worrying about the therapy dog or when the therapy dog walks down the hallway and the distraction that occurs. So I'm not in favor of this policy.
Well, I think this policy is not open to an employee having a dog. We've put in the policy that 2 hours is the maximum time that the dog can be in the work situation and so on. And so there are therapy dogs that are in the community. There are organizations and so on that if they feel that a therapy dog on an isolated situation is beneficial, then contact a therapy dog owner to bring in, not have the dog there all day. And we've built that in with the 2-hour time limit that is in the policy. I don't have a problem with the policy as written. I would have a problem, as you've said, with an all-day dog in the school.
Okay.
Go ahead, Lance.
Thank you. I'd like to, I don't know, as far as like therapeutic, therapy, so there are a lot of things I think that are therapeutic within the school setting. I mean, we got Be Kind T-shirts on, right? We push that thing because we want kids to be kind. And when somebody does something kind to you, that in and of itself is therapeutic. Somebody opening a door for you, saying, you know, I mean, have a great day or whatever the case is, or not even saying anything to you, I think that's therapeutic. I think even animals and like with the elderly and everything else, when a loved one passes away or something along that lines, I think there are a lot of things that are that within the education system that are therapeutic. I would love to see this go forward, to see what it, you know, I mean, it's a pilot program, right? I mean, we're not, you know, what are we losing from it that, you know, and you're right, maybe it could go into the other schools. If it takes off and it happens to do well, if that gives our students a pick-me-up in the middle of the day and they see the dog or whatever else, and that gives them a better outlook on school, I'm all for it. I think that is something that's, yeah, I think it's positive. I think it's positive.
I guess my 2 cents are that I had a student come up to me at the Night of the Stars, and he was like, "Hey, we're gonna get the dog. Is it gonna happen before I graduate?" And it's like, no. He was thoroughly disappointed because he would have liked to have had that opportunity. I think a couple of things that, as we have in here, that I think we ought to keep in mind. One is in the policy committee, when this first came up, I know that those present had, and I think even in our group discussion, we don't, this board, at least at present, doesn't support bringing, having this opportunity to come in, and then it morphs into something else where it's like, okay, this, the one individual that's kind of leading this is in a high school setting. So this isn't meant to turn into like, oh, we're going to go to read to the dogs at Ben Chambers or whatever. That would be for administration to monitor, but I think this and probably future boards would say, I'm not looking to have somebody say, oh, we would need another ex, counselor or whatever, because this now turned into a complete district-wide program. But this policy, as it's laid out, gives us gives administration the opportunity to cancel it at any time if it's not working out, and the handler owner has full financial responsibility, including ensuring that there's insurance. So I go back to something we had heard at one point: why not try? We don't have any. There's really almost no investment in this from our perspective. And if we see that it really isn't adding value or whatever, then okay, cancel it. So this is something I think the board just says, all right, administration, give it a try. No cost to the district. And if you think you shouldn't, then cancel it. So Carl, you're the only, I think you and Ed are the only ones that hadn't said anything. Doesn't mean you have to, but just.
Well, I think there's built into the policy guidelines, just to, it's not going to be that it takes away a counselor, to do it, because as it says in the policy, as an outside independent handler, and also we're controlling, the number of hours it's here, so I think the policy's well written, and I think as Dr. Sure, as you said, I think we have to trust the administration to make sure it wouldn't get out of hand, which is what some have expressed maybe it could be.
All right. Anything else on it?
Yeah, I have just a couple thoughts, and I'm not so sure the policy is complete yet. And one thing that I'll say, it says the owner, I lost my page, darn it. The owner handler must submit a copy of an insurance policy that provides liability coverage for the therapy dog while on district property, period. What are the coverage limits? How much coverage do they need? Who is listed as the additional insured? I mean,
Yeah, Bill Z has some thoughts on that one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I wouldn't put that in a policy. I think that's too cumbersome to have in a policy, because policy limits shift what your requirements would be. I think you have to have something established in the policy that says it needs to be submitted, and then that would be more in the way of an AR. Whenever we review any of your agreements with vendors, we look at insurance coverage, who's an additional insured, what the policy limits are. But I think if you put it in policy, it could sit out there. The numbers could be off. I think if you have it in AR, you have more flexibility with that. That would be my recommendation.
so who approves the AR?
Your administration. But my thought would be that they would want to probably talk with us about what would make sense, and we're pretty standard with respect to policy limits and additional insured. So I think this would be treated no different than any other vendor policy or a vendor contract that you have. I mean, again, you could put it in there, but I think it would be cumbersome to have to pull it back and change your policy each time you want to make an adjustment to any nuance to insurance coverage.
One other question I have here on the 2 hours. If a staff member for the school district brings the dog in, do they plan for someone else to take it home because they're on school hours and they're...
I don't see how this policy would adapt to an employee having a dog. The way I see this therapy dog policy being implemented would be via therapy dogs in the community that volunteer.
Okay, so that maybe that's my confusion, because I know this first started out that an employee wanted to bring their therapy dog in. So under this policy, would employees be allowed to bring their dogs in on school time?
How would they do it with a 2-hour?
Well, that's what I was questioning, but that's how this initially, a lot of this got started. So, Mr. Z, does that include district employees bringing in service dogs during school hours?
I think that's probably a Tina question more than a Bill question, so I'll let her start and then I can weigh in.
I'm not sure if that's a Tina question or a Dr. Shirk question, but I know it is something that we discussed in detail with the policy committee, and there were a lot of concerns voiced about the loss of work time with employees bringing their own dogs in. You know, I'm not sure as far as what the schedule would be for an employee. I know in this specific example, we're talking about a guidance counselor. If there would be an opportunity that they would have free time to run the dog home, so to speak, and come back in, if it would be, you know, using their lunchtime or what have you.
To me, I'm like, I'm not sweating this one because how that gets implemented is on the building principal.
Yeah, it certainly is on the building principal, but then if they have to spend time taking their dog home, that's fewer kids that they get to see that day.
Which the building principal would have to factor in if they decide to approve it or not.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, this clearly is not going on the consent agenda. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ed.
One of my other questions, and I raised this when the teacher was in, or counselor was in back this winter. So if we're going to have a policy, and I think someone's answer this is probably going to be, that's going to be administration and AR, but we are, who can bring a dog? Can the aide in the lunchroom bring a therapy dog at lunchtime? You know, I don't know. I'm concerned this is just maybe way too open and too much interpretation. And just one other thing to clarify, someone mentioned about Shippensburg School District. It's my understanding that the dog, I think soon to be plural, if not already plural, Tina, you may know this, that dog is actually, or dogs are actually property of the school district. The school district bought those dogs. You know, they paid a breeder to breed them specifically for this. They're not another person's animal. I think there's someone else who takes care of it, but the dog was actually purchased by the school district.
Yeah, I don't think we know the specifics on.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, that is correct, Mr. Norcross. I know during my tenure at Shippensburg, the principal of our intermediate school took this on herself. So this, as you stated, was an animal that was specifically bred and trained and raised for the purpose of being a therapy dog, and the principal was actually responsible for the dog The principal brought the dog into school every day. When she would be at a meeting, the dog would be with her. I mean, it was a very well-trained animal.
So, Dr. Scher, are you recommending that we not put it on the consent agenda, but still have it on the regular agenda?
Yes.
That makes sense to me.
Just kind of tallying in my head, I know there's 3 individuals that said they're not in favor of it, which means that there's 5 that either are or otherwise. So I don't know. Ed, did you have anything else?
No, they're my concerns.
Okay. So, non-consent agenda. Next one will jump to 107. Mr. Woodman for attorney's fees for Apple, Yoast, and Z.
Yes, on the cover sheet that I have, it's partner fees are $230, associates $200, paralegals $150, administrative support $70.
Any questions? All right, we'll move that to the consent agenda. Now, just before Mr. Z heads out, does anybody have anything else just skimming down over it that we think we might want his real-time input on? Okay, well, run while you can. And if anything comes up, then we'll email you or call you or something. So I think we'll be all right. All right, then we've covered 107 and 115. We'll jump back to the top. 101, all school bus stuff for the first couple. So, Mrs. Stein.
Yes, so the administration recommends the approval of contracts. These are non-pub transportation contracts with Shalom Christian Academy and the Cumberland Valley Christian School. This would be for July 1st, 2023, and then end June 30th of 2026.
You kind of have to do this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we have to offer transportation. We have to honor the transportation. Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So consent agenda, solicit bids number 102.
Yes. So we are seeking permission to go ahead and advertise for the solicitation of bids for one school bus that would be purchased out of the 23-24 budget. This was a line item in the budget that was approved earlier this evening.
And I think you had shown this before in one of the committees. This was kind of like the transportation's equivalent of the
Yeah.
multi-year plan.
Yeah, and we are replacing a 1998 bus.
It's a good year. All right. How many thousand miles does that have?
I don't know that, but I could get that for you if you'd like.
This fast. These things just keep on going. All right, so my little pause. Okay, consent agenda, 103.
Yeah, on 103, unfortunately, I regret to inform you that Jean Mackey, who is one of our smaller contractors, changed her mind regarding continuing. Jean spent 47 years as a bus driver for the district. She's well liked by the students, and she's asked for termination of the contract that was approved at the last board meeting, as she will be retiring.
Okay, consent agenda. Keep on rolling, Tammy.
Okay, 104, you've seen these before. These are repository sales. There are 3 parcels that all contained late modeled mobile homes, and they've been bid on by the individuals that you see in the documentation. The county is asking us to accept these repository sales so that they can put it back into tax generating status.
Okay, consent agenda. 105.
105 is we're asking for to engage again Barley Snyder for the next fiscal year. As you know, Barley Snyder represents us for our tax appeals. The the fees are in the public content. Partner is $285 an hour, associates $225 per hour, paralegals $150 per hour, and they do not charge us for administrative support.
All right. Consent, 106.
Yes, 106 is our fixed asset reporting. This was formerly Duff and Phelps. This is an annual thing that we need to do for our audit. The fee next year will be $2,800. It will be budgeted through the business office budget. This is a small increase, $50 over fiscal year 22-23.
All right. We're on a roll. Consent, 108. Mr. Woodman, you got the next couple?
Yeah, this one is for one student to attend the Vista School for the 23-24 school year. This is a renewal contract. The student's already there.
And we'll continue next year.
Yes.
All right. Consent agenda, 109.
Turn the page here. 109 this is a contract renewal for school-based health contracts with Keystone. This is yearly.
All right. Consent agenda. Hey, we're popping them tonight. 110. Dr. Long.
This is the final site website agreement. What had happened was Blackboard was our previous vendor for the website. Final Site purchased Blackboard, and they are requiring us to convert over to the new platform. This will take about 6 to 10 weeks to do. There's a lot of new features for this, and it will cost an additional $1,200 setup fee that will come out of technology. The other fees are the same, which are coming out of the technology budget. The statement of work is there for the public, but the contract is actually proprietary, so Mr. Z said to put it under executive content.
Okay. It seems like it will be a benefit.
Yes,
so.
Very much so.
All right, 111. So
this is the renewal of the health and safety plan. We must do this every 6 months. So June is the time that we do this. So there's only a couple revisions that are in bold. Masks are optional in the Keystone Health Clinic. It's on page 5. And then down through the document, when you get to the chart, it says masks are optional at the Keystone Health Clinic there as well. And then we added if necessary for the B modifying facilities. All students and staff continue to be encouraged to physically distance. If something happens and then we do get an outbreak, then we will need to do something there if necessary. Otherwise, June 27th also on E, contact tracing at-home test kits are available, and request has been stricken from the document because we do not have test kits any longer.
Okay.
And then the final review for this year will be on December 19th.
And this has got to be done like every 6 months for what, until the ESSER's money is done?
That's correct.
So we got like another year.
September 24 unless they extend it.
Oh, if they extended that,
Do we have to do
give more money.
Do we have to do a dashboard report in a 14-day rolling average?
It's actually a 15-day rolling average.
Yeah. We're not even going to go there.
Send me to detention with 2 demerits.
Yeah, that's bringing up bad memories.
So true.
All right, 112.
112 is the dental contract. Our previous dentist has decided to quit doing this. Our new dentist is Dr. Evan Smith. He's agreed to this. One change in the contract was the whether we let me see, where's it at? Sorry. On occasion, special occasions, provide sterilization for the equipment. What we have been doing is purchasing plastic equipment that the dental hygienist can use. And then this service agreement for $1,000 was raised from $500. $500 was used for quite a few years. So it's a $500 increase.
But still.
And it's required to have a dentist.
Yeah, but also still
pretty cheap.
Appreciated.
Yes.
For the service. Okay, 113.
Dual enrollment agreement with Carlo University. This one is for the child care area that we have. So this will give students the ability to get an associate's degree with the classes that we do have. So Carlo is working with us, and that also goes along with the grant that we received for dual enrollment. So we have Penn State, and now we have Carlo, and we're looking at probably 5 or 6 other ones to bring to the board as well.
Yeah, that's something we don't always talk about a whole lot, just the program that Cassius has. Yeah.
Tiny
we're in the
Trojans.
building down there.
Tiny Trojans, yeah.
Yeah, Tiny Trojans.
How many years have we had that?
Oh my. I'm going to take a guess, 7 or 8 years, I would say.
Oh, yeah, I would, yeah.
Is that Carlo out of the Pittsburgh area?
No, we're talking about Tiny Trojans.
No, Carlo University, is that Pittsburgh?
Carlo, it's in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh,
Okay,
yeah.
no, I'm just checking.
Yep.
When that's presented at the next meeting, perhaps we could have a little bit said about that, because people don't know that we have that. So it'd be great to highlight that program a little bit, even a couple slides or something,
So,
because it's a real positive.
so we'll put this on the consent agenda, but have a little informational presentation before consent agenda on the Tiny Trojan stuff. It's like a couple slides.
7 years ago, so.
All right? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Slides. Yep.
Just want it like, yep, information item of the program, and then,
Yes.
and then we'll have this on the consent agenda for the dual enrollment.
Oh, it's definitely longer than that. because there's pictures of it, like say.
Yeah, Dr. Shore, if I can correct myself, we put the Tiny Trojan lab in when the school was rebuilt. So that would be 2007, 8
7, 8,
area.
yeah.
So
I was gonna say, I think it was, I know you said 7 years, I'm like, I think it was that was before I got on the board. So.
Right. Yeah, so my timeline was all off.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Okay, 114.
Okay, 114 is revision of policy 202, eligibility of non-resident students. This policy was reviewed by Mark Long and Claire Weber. You will see the changes as indicated in the attachment. And then we also did have a discussion at the policy committee about needing additional clarification on what a prospective resident would be, and that clarification is also included in the proposed revision.
Yeah, this one came up a couple months in a row at policy committee, but we finally got it right. Okay.
Okay, next is 116, 830. This is a revision to policy. This is as a result of updates to Act 151 that were passed the beginning of May. According to Christine Wolgemuth, who reviewed this policy, definitions and timelines were amended. And then there was some additional information listed under personal information items. Numbers 4, 5, and 6 were added to the policy. Okay, and then last, 1.17, we're skipping over the therapy dog policy that we've already discussed. This is 830.1, data governance, storage security. Again, this is a new policy, and it was created to address the updates to Act 151, and basically it outlines how we must report.
All right, anything else? Group?
Mark,
All right, go ahead, Ed.
I forgot to mention earlier. We probably won't have a replacement candidate from Region 2 selected. So, if the alternate wants to attend Career Tech meeting at the end of the month, we'll have an empty seat there.
Okay. And
I had a comment.
yep, down there. Okay.
What I was thinking about is the discussion has centered around the cleanliness of our buildings, specifically the bathroom. I would like to recommend that maybe the administration put together a plan on how we're going to deal with that, because it keeps repeating itself at our meetings, and I want to make sure that we have good hygiene in our facilities, and recommendations on how we do that, whether we put crews together. What are we going to change to take that issue off the table so it doesn't keep repeating itself at board meetings?
So
yeah, maybe that's a good point. Maybe just a report from the administration. I mean,
on the bathroom.
Is it a problem?
On the bathroom, what was it? Cleanliness
Of the buildings.
I mean, I think at one point Ed Peters said absolutely not, but maybe that's changed. I don't know. It's
Whether we need more supervision for the custodians. I know we're short-staffed in some cases, but in many cases perhaps. But some suggestions that working with the administration on what we can do. I don't have those answers, but it keeps being repeated, and I would like to put that to rest.
Okay, we're good. You got that? All right. Anything else? Okay, signing off. Have a good night.